Hello. The past few years, I've participated in the BSO Academy, the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra Academy, and quite a few people are involved, but I'd like to recognize Jane Marvine for her role in putting together this really wonderful program that puts high-level amateur musicians alongside BSO musicians for a full week of exchange, learning, fellowship, and finally some really wonderful performances that lift the spirits of all those involved in the sharing that happens during that week. I've had the opportunity to share some presentations over the years at the lunch meetings. This year I did one entitled The Optics of Music Making, and quite a few people asked, did you record it? I'd like to see this type of thing. And we're finding people that I met with who, in a positive way, have had changes as we design music reading lenses for them, and they're wanting to share this information with other people. And I thought the best first place to start would be to send them to actually watch this presentation. So I'm recording it after the fact. Today is Sunday in August 17. I will post this to the web and make it available both through my personal website, but I will share the links to the YouTube presentation of this with people who run the BSO Academy. And if they choose, they will also make it available to the people who participated. So this year's presentation I did was very different. I wanted to help the attendees, myself included. I'm a bass trombonist, you'll see in a moment. Um, I as consumers of eye care, I wanted the people who I interact with or who will be looking to get glasses specifically or contacts to help them in the music performance situation. I wanted them to be informed consumers. So here is that presentation that I gave at lunch, but more direct. So. Little background about myself. I started in fourth grade playing baritone horn. In seventh grade, I added the tenor trombone. And then in the summer of 1969, I went to the Interlochen Music Camp, brought both instruments, and really had a wonderful time. While there, I learned that there was this place called the Interlochen Arts Academy. Wish I'd figured it out sooner and started a year early. But I went for my last 2 years of high school on, started as trombone, but then eventually shifted to bass trombone and euphonium. I went directly on from there to Northwestern, 1972 to 75, only 3 years. Had a chance to play in most of the organizations involved with that had brass playing at Northwestern, and was fortunate to get into the Chicago Civic Orchestra and play alongside uh, Jim Olin as first trombone, and to my left was Max Bonecutter, the bass trombone. At the time, I was playing a small bass and had a chance to play second between them. Um, I went to optometry school. Uh, you don't need to know what the transition was, but I did go to optometry school starting in 1975, graduating in 1979, and auditioned for and got into the National Orchestral Association. That's a training orchestra with New York Phil, and just had a wonderful time while in my last year of optometry school, both rehearsing and performing in Carnegie. Um, 1981, late 81, I actually moved to Baltimore and did some subbing with the Baltimore Symphony, um, just once in a while, that kind of thing. And then I moved in 2010 to Memphis. The optometry school here made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And from 2017, the last time I subbed was 2023. I did some subbing with Memphis Symphony as well. From 2015, I've been playing in a big band with the Memphis Knights. I perform with on euphonium with the Memphis Wind Symphony. But let me give you a little of my background about my being a behavioral optometrist. I went to SUNY State University of New York State College of Optometry from 1975 to 79, and I practiced in New York with my dad from graduation to late 1981. I decided I wanted my dad just to be my dad, not my business partner. So I moved to Baltimore. And from January of 1982 to September of 2010, I had a wonderful practice in the Towson Timonium area of Baltimore. That's on the north side of Baltimore. During that time, I collaborated actually with the clarinetist Frank Kowalski, who had been clarinet teacher at Interlochen, and then I think at that time he was down in Tallahassee, now out in the Seattle, Washington area, I believe. But we collaborated together, and he published in The Instrumentalist Vision and Music Making, November of 1986. I do have PDF of that. If anyone's interested, just contact me. My email's right at the end, and I'll be glad to provide you a copy of that. I also published in December of 1988 an article entitled Visual Conditions of Symphony Musicians. This was in the prestigious Journal of the American Optometric Association, and basically took a theory of a colleague of mine about astigmatism and being in constrained postures for extended periods of time, and what that did in terms of the development of and the maintenance of astigmatism. In 2010, I became a professor at Southern College of Optometry in Memphis, and I retired from that teaching position in February of 2023. Um, I've stayed very, very active, been part of a small group that founded a new nonprofit, and we've been doing postgraduate education in the profession of optometry since. So, optics, really? Um, Basically, the following is offered to help you help yourselves. I think in the medical world, probably in lots of the world, we need to be our own best advocates. So I want you to be able to get the best vision care. That will help you be the best musician you can be. Each of us needs to be our own advocate, and knowing even just what's possible really can help. So here's a the anatomy of the eye. I'm not going to teach you this, but different words may come up. I can point to here. This is the cornea, the clear part of the eye that things come through. The lens in the eye. Towards the end of this presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about cataracts, and cataracts affect the lens of the eye. The pupil is the little hole that's left as the iris closes and opens and changes the amount of light that gets into the eye. And then you have the retina, macula, and everything else in the back of the eye. So you all know the words of the what these general, what we call refractive optical conditions are. Myopia or nearsightedness, and hyperopia or farsightedness. In myopia, the power of the optics in the front part is generally too strong for the relative length of the eye, and the image is brought to focus too early. Um, and or in front of, and if this were to continue, you end up with a blurry image on the retina. You need a concave lens, a lens that's thinner in the center, thicker out at the edges, to push this image back onto the retina to make it clear. The higher the amount of myopia, the bigger the minus number in the first part of your prescription, the thicker this lens needs to be, thicker at the edge, thinner in the center, in order to move that image all the way back. In hyperopia, if the lens of the eye is relaxed, because most of us, when we're young, I'm a hyperope, um, we didn't leave things blurred. We just put in some effort and made things clear. But if this is relaxed, the focus is behind, and if the person cannot supply the proper focusing here, we need a lens that's thicker in the center and thinner out at the edges to bring the image from behind onto the retina. So that's myopia or nearsightedness and hyperopia, farsightedness. Now, in general, distance acuity, visual acuity is going to be fixed with some kind of contact lenses or glasses so that the image you see of the visual acuity chart here on the right that's blurred can become clear with lenses that are set for distance. Um, and that can be done with either glasses or contacts. And most of you and most eye care practitioners, be they optometry or ophthalmology, are incredibly competent at coming up with the lens power that will do that to the distance chart. Occasionally, some people have some conditions of the eye that require a master refractionist. That's the procedures where we go, tell me which is better, this way or this way. And then there's a sequence of those, and we come closer and closer and closer to finding a lens that actually helps make the world clear for you or as best we can. Irregularities in the cornea, beginning cataract, other types of things, floaters in the eye, etc., can degrade the image so that even with the best, quote, refractionist, person who knows procedurally how to give you the right choices of which is better, one or two in front, you still have trouble coming up with the best lens. So, but most eye care practitioners out there are absolutely fantastic about doing that. Now, I took this picture from the BSO's website. And I thought we could use this internally here. They have it on a public facing kind of thing. And you can see the musicians here working hard and the conductor about to move the baton in a way that all these people are working together to try to be synchronized. And I found it interesting. I looked and I said, well, how many of these musicians are actually looking at the conductor? Um, uh, and I think it's interesting. There is one, this cello player, I don't know his name, is looking really directly at the baton or maybe the conductor's face. And but everybody else is so concentrated either on the music, on their instrument, on something to help make wonderful music. Now, my point here is if we asked any of these musicians, were you looking at the conductor? First thing I want to say is, I bet every single one would say yes. They weren't directly focused on or fixated on the conductor, except for our one musician over there, but they all were aware of what's happening on stage in front of them. Otherwise, they really wouldn't be able to stay together. So One of the points I wanted to make here is that we use our peripheral vision, and as long as the conductor is very consistent as to where they stop their downbeat, where they go to the side, where they go to the side, come up and come down, we can pick that up peripherally and work wonders with it. So a lot of people that say, "Oh, I need to see the conductor. I need to see his or her face so I get the facial expressions, etc." Um, I keep this picture in mind. This is another picture of the BSO. I believe that's Marin up in front of the orchestra. This is probably a little bit older. In fact, some of the musicians there, I think, have retired already. Um, Interesting configuration with the double basses well on the left. But I put this one up primarily to look at the working distances. What I mean is, how far away is the music? Um, if we look at Carney here, and you were to measure all the way out to the music stand, um, it's pretty far. Um, and even from here all the way out, and you can see the two violinists are, this one is a little closer, this one is a little further. Very aware about the sharing stands, particularly with cellos and the double basses, how far apart they are, how big the instruments are in front, and the working distance here. And one of the questions comes up is, well, how far away? And here is another view of this. Here, conductor Jonathan is up, and a beautiful smile. And again, how many faces here are looking directly at? And on this one, I couldn't find one. Maybe all the way back here, but it's hard to know where her eyes might be looking at that instance. Where do optometrists and ophthalmologists, your eye care practitioner, where do they test for near? I pulled this out of a demonstration video, a stop action thing here. And this distance that we test at to get, quote, reading glasses is actually 40 centimeters or 16 inches. And I just go back to here and say, again, is this 16 inches? And it's like, not even close. Double and some are triple that distance. So whatever number your eye care practitioner is doing, what they write in a prescription, one number slash and a, say, for example, plus 2.50. That's a number suitable for 16 inches away. That's not a good lens for looking at music that's well past arm's length. So I do want to give a little bit of optics here. These are not really to scale. I guess you could maybe magnify it or minify so that this really is 20 centimeters or zero point 0.2 of a meter. But the +5 focuses the lens very close. A +2 further away, that's half a meter. And a +1 all the way, this is 1 meter or 39 point whatever inches um, out in space. Um, and these are the second numbers of most people's prescription. And again, that 2.50 would be 40 centimeters closer in than here. And that's just simply not suitable for most musicians. So this was a little table just to give you a general sense of that. In because the equations were all done in meters or centimeters or millimeters, but most of us don't think that way. I just wanted to give you an equivalent here of these powers, and you see the plus 100 centimeters or 39.4 inches. Um, And your double basses absolutely are further than that. Many violas or cello players further than that. So one of the errors I see is that eye care practitioners that don't understand what musicians do typically will write a prescription. They might look at the appropriate lens for reading and say, well, it needs to be less. You would need a 2.5. Let me cut it to a 2 or to a 1.75. And even there, we're only gaining to the 175 6 extra inches out to get our optimal clarity. So I think having this table will help you in understanding and maybe even help the eye care practitioner you go to serve your needs in making a lens for you. Then I want to talk a little bit about depth of field. Those of you in the audience or those of you watching this, if you're camera buffs, you would totally understand this f stop. The f 1.4 here is as wide open as that lens can be. It's a good light gatherer, and that would work very well in low light level conditions. In order to gather light. But you're going to get an incredibly what we call, and I'll show you on the next slides, a shallow depth of field of focus if you have fairly large pupils. It's your own pupil in the eye that does this. And a tiny pupil like this, or a camera stopped down, that this is an f 8.0, um, may need a longer exposure. It may need to be open longer for the film. And as I talk about this, I think of my iPhone, and there's no film, and there's no aperture, and there's no. It's all pretty automated. But if we still think camera and eye as a camera, these are things we need to think about a little bit. As we age, our pupil tends to get smaller, but it never gets small enough to give us a huge depth of field of focus. Now, here's what I mean by depth of field of focus. In the top one, the person has the camera with the lens as wide open a pupil, say the f 1.4, and it's showing a shallow depth of field of focus that if the front of the deer was in focus, the trees closer to the camera or the trees or background further from the camera are blurred. Um, we see this in say a picture with picket fence coming from the foreground to the background. And if you have this shallow depth of field of focus, only a few of the pickets are clear, those beyond blur and those in front blur. Where am I heading with all of this? Where I'm heading is that it's really um, whatever lens we decide or you and your eye care practitioner decide on, there's a depth of focus. It's not one place that's perfect. And the realities are as we age and lose the focusing power of the lens of our eye, we can't get everything clear with one lens. That's really where I'm heading with this. Now, in the bottom, this is a stop down situation. So the small aperture, think this f.8 lens over here. And now you have all the way from here, all the way out to distance, the whole scene is clear. And uh, with your SLR, your single lens reflex, or your older cameras, this was something that the photographer wanted to control. And there were times where they wanted the effect of the shallow depth of field of focus. And then there's times where they simply want as much as possible clear. And I know that every one of you want everything clear with one lens. And again, we're heading down the path of I'm trying to help you understand it's just simply not possible. Now, another thing about this depth of field of focus, it's not symmetrical, it's asymmetric. So in this instance, you have the camera to the left. It's focused at this distance here, and the zone of clarity in front, closer to the camera and further, are asymmetric in that 1/3 of the clarity is closer and 2/3 is beyond. Um, so it's just to understand if we place a lens that makes, say, in my setup here, the computer screen, which is right here, as clear as my place. If I go to write on a paper or look at my phone, it will not be in the correct place for that lens. Um, and an adjustment, if I wanted to be able to look at my phone and look at my screen and go back and forth, I'd have to set the focus of the lens somewhere in between in order to make that happen. And it becomes very difficult if the optically, these things are too far apart. So let's talk about focusing range. A child, very young child, can focus from infinity, optical infinity, all the way into about 3 inches with no problem. 20-year-old, easily to 16 inches. 30-year-old, that begins to shift to 22. And you see, as we age, it goes further and further away. So, this ability to change focus, there's a loss of elasticity in the lens itself, in the eye. The muscles are pulling or letting go, and it just is not as elastic and can't change as much. And that's what's happening. That's part of the aging process. Some people escape it. It's very rare. But we generally think at about age 10 or 12, we reach our peak, and it's slowly dropping down somewhere about 70. It doesn't change pretty much anymore. You can try, but it mostly doesn't change. And that's why we need glasses. It begins to affect the reading distance. Pretty absolutely, people first start pushing things away. But in the late 30s, early 40s, we tend to start to need reading glasses or some assistance there. Interestingly, some people, the over-the-counter powers start at a certain number, and people tend to buy ones that are a little too strong. And that actually does lead to a decrease in your own natural focusing ability by depending too much on too strong of a lens. A lot packed in there, but this is not the time for going through all of that education. So there was a study done. The lead into this was I was teaching in Norway, and I do a lot of international teaching in this. And at the end of a 5-day course, actually, 5 lovely women came up to me and said, "Can we have our picture taken with you?" And I was like, "Fine, but why?" And they said, "Well, we replicated your work on visual conditions of symphony musicians, and it won a national award. And we just want to thank you." And it was like absolutely wonderful. It took a while to get the paper, and when I did, it was all in Norwegian. Um, it's still not all translated into English, but I was able to sit down and work through it with some assistance. And it turned out, whereas I had only gone to the Baltimore Symphony, they went to 6 orchestras in Norway. And they replicated my work, but they also went beyond. So Of those six different orchestras that contributed, 60% were strings, 21% woodwinds, 10% brass, and 7.9% um, percussion. So here, what we have are, and these are all in meters. Again, sorry, I wasn't going to go through and translate everything into inches or feet, but you can do that if you're really interested. Um, and what this was, the first column, and it's all by instrument, is what is the closest distance they found anybody got to the stand, and then what's the furthest distance? So that's a range. So, for example, violin from half a meter to 1 meter was the range. Your percussion, 1 meter to 1.2. So you get the idea here. And then they went and based on where those they were in the orchestra, how far were they from the conductors? So you see a range in violin from 1.5 meters, that would be your first stand, to 7 meters or 23, 24 feet away, kind of thing. Clarinet from 6 to 8, bassoon 6 to 9.5, low brass generally were around 9 meters away. Get them away. No, no, it's um, any rate. And this was interesting information that I had not collected with my work with Baltimore Symphony. All right, let's talk about different types of ophthalmic lenses. Um, these are the eyeglasses that we wear, and they're single vision, bifocal, trifocal, and progressives. Often, often some people use the word multifocal, and multifocal would actually take in bi, tri, and progressives, but people tend to use multifocal for progressives. So single vision, I think we all understand those. We started out with those if we were wearing glasses. It's the same power throughout the entire lens. A bifocal that we see up in the top here, you usually have a distance and you have a smaller section, usually down low, because most of our near work is done down low, and that's a bifocal. A trifocal, I don't have a picture there. Oh, there's a little one over here that shows an intermediate and near. I can hold these up. I don't know how big that is. These are my regular glasses. This is a distance, intermediate, and near. The glasses I'm wearing here are a bifocal. Um, you have the distance around, and I have my computer lens, or a lens that's pretty much set for just beyond my arm's reach. Now, down below here, we have a typical progressive lens. The progressive lens, really a nightmare, but sold as the savior of the world. And I hope to educate you as to why, even if you're comfortable with these as general purpose, you don't want these in the orchestra, you don't want these in the pit. Um, they're not really good for musicians. What you have is by design a sweet spot for distance. You have a near zone, you have this intermediate or progressive corridor, and all the rest, in essence, the blending regions. Um, Another term for that would be crap. There are so many distortions and other things you're going to see as I step through a few slides. And what this does is it causes the person wearing a progressive lens to have to point their nose at whatever they're looking to try to find in between the crap on either side to find where the best optics are. Um, Many of us musicians are eye movers. I hold my horn, it's on my face. I'm not going side to side like this. I'm not going up on the higher part of the page or down to look at the lower part of the page. I want to keep the horn so that the bell is exposed, the sound can come out, and I use my eyes to go up, down, left, and right, and often across a double page kind of setup as we go. So we all want to see like when we were 20. We want one pair of glasses that does everything, and we don't want to have to move our head into odd places to try to get things in focus. Um, so the challenges of these lenses are, in general, not music. Close things are in down gaze. I look at my Apple Watch and I look down. I look at my phone and I look down. Um, Most distance things are in up gaze or straight ahead. People generally, we only need to see in small areas. Oh, we have this idea everything's perfectly clear, but it really turns out um, if I were to look just at the camera and put very, very large print on the computer screen here, I would know there's large print, but I couldn't read it unless I look down to foveate it. And when we are looking at music, you pretty much need to look at the music in order to see where the notes are, what the accidentals are. Some things are easier to read, some things are harder to read in terms of the manuscript, the transcription, the paper used, that kind of thing. More and more electronics being used that allow us to change and modify and blow up easily. Um, but we still only see we see detail in only a relatively small area at once. So I wanted to show you here, these are two different types of progressives. Actually, yeah, this is the same one, showing you the distance part here, the near part here, and your zones of blending. Okay. Um, this is where you get the unwanted power. They're asymmetric in design, so the right and left lens don't look the same. And this is the amount of astigmatism that's actually added. So you only get clean optics up here in this design and clean optics here. Um, and we get spatial distortion. The red would be a grid. Now, think of a grid as our piece of music, and there are these spatial distortions with a progressive lens. You get closest to normal in this upper area, but in the lower part, they're pulled in and expanded, and you notice that the straight lines are not straight anymore. The horizontal lines are curved downward, and the vertical lines spread apart down below. And this is simply a matter of fact of the change in power. And each of those different designs of the progressive lens is going to cause more or less of this kind of distortion. What you often hear from the dispenser who's giving you the glasses, you'll get used to it, give yourself a week, that kind of thing. Um, uh, I couldn't stand them myself. I am very productive in life and in my work life and even personal life in terms of reading and visual performance. And there's not a single study that actually shows things like reading speed, comprehension, work productivity are better with a progressive lens. Everything, by the way, the literature we read within optometry is patient acceptance. Will the patient accept how they see through this? And for general purpose, if you like them and you function well with them, that's fine. Um, but for music, it's not what you want. Okay. So I want to give you a fun case that I enjoyed working with. This was the former principal oboe for Baltimore Symphony, and I really enjoyed working with him. I enjoyed his playing over the years, and he said, "Look, I absolutely, through the top part of my lens, I need to see the conductor's facial expressions. They're critical to me. I simply need this." But he then said, but I work on reeds on stage, and I do this at about 11 inches away. Okay. And then I looked at my power table, and that's a 3.50 net difference from the top part to the bottom part. But then he said, I, when I play oboe, I don't move around. I'm pretty stable. And to get from the top of and we did this with a grease pencil, I could mark on his lens and then we could measure um, where's in your posture, where's the top of your music stand, put a line on the lens, and then put a line on the bottom because didn't want to move up and down. And this was Joe Turner. And it turned out it was 16 millimeters high, or amount of glass that I would have needed to make in the prescription. It was only a +1 ad out at 39 inches. So he needed a sliver that was for the conductor to see the face perfectly clear. He wanted 16 millimeters high on the lens itself in order to see with this +1 net difference. And then he wanted a full 3.5 difference from the distance to working on the reed on stage. Um, this posed an incredible design problem. Why? If I order a trifocal, the intermediate is exactly half the power of the lowest ad. Well, the lowest part ad here is 350. That would have made the intermediate 1.75, and he couldn't bring the stand in that close to make that work. So a standard trifocal simply wouldn't work. That's what I just said here. And the tallest intermediate lens design was 14 millimeters high. So we resorted to something called a Ben Franklin. Um, Ben was the first one to design bifocal. And the way the Ben Franklin bifocal was done is you actually had two separate pieces of glass. They weren't even joined together, they were held together in the frame. So we had that idea, and I ended up designing a lens. We'll just put this in here and show you. I didn't have, I thought I had a picture of his actual lenses. I didn't. So I drew this in. This is um, from the internet, a Ben Franklin design, where you have the top part is one lens, the bottom part is another. But I had a standard flat top 25 bifocal put into the lower section, and it worked. He loved them, and from the day I made it, he was able to wear it in the symphony. So designing music glasses for a musician starts with, we've got to start with a reliable distance prescription. If you're seeing well, right eye, left eye, and then both eyes together with your current distance, and it's been done by a better refractionist, and you have an in-force prescription, that's what we would start with. Then comes with knowing your working distance. How far are you from your music? Now, interesting side story here. For years, I would ask musicians and people who worked on computers, I want you to go home and measure the distance. And it turns out the act of measuring it without the instrument um, or without actually working on the computer, I was getting very unreliable numbers, just plain unreliable numbers. And what I found with my computer users was um, I then resorted to let's walk around my office and find a computer setup that's closest to the one you work with. Then let me sit you down, get the keyboard in the position. I'd open up Microsoft Word and let them just start working and playing. Then I would trial lenses in to actually work and then ask them, I want you to lean in until it starts to blur. Come back. We're going to make it nice and clear, and then back up until it starts to blur. And I needed to find that range, that depth of field of focus, a third in front, two-thirds behind, that gives you the range that you're really looking for. I don't have an easy way to show you, but I've got a two-screen setup here, and then I have a holder over here for the vertical things. Actually, I might be able to, let me zoom out. And then let's point downward. That's the one screen. Okay, I have to, it's tracking my face. Um, let's go off to this side. Here's the second screen over here. And if I come over to this side, here's the holder of the things. And optically, all of this is, now I'll bring it back to center here and zoom back in. Uh, if I hold my hand up, it'll auto focus. There we go. Um, all of this is the same optical distance away from me, so that the same lens that I have in this in a big wide section, I can just look with my eyes over here. I can look, yes, I need to move my head a little bit, but these are 27-inch screens and two legal pads next to each other on this book stand or cookbook holder kind of thing in order to have my workspace laid out that way. So, first of all, having somebody else maybe measure while you're practicing how far is from the bridge of your nose right here to the center of the music stand. And you might need to go to the top corner, lower corner, put out a double page just to get a sense of that. I always think it's interesting when anybody who shares a stand, I won't point to string players. I know you do it far more than we do in the brass section. And they always feel they have to explain to me that we share stands. It's like, I know, I've been in a, I look, I see, and sometimes there's not a perfectly even sharing going on. One of them wants to get closer and get in the way, and that kind of thing. So I'm very aware, but getting an accurate measure of your working distance is something we can then convert into what's the net difference in the different parts of the lens in order to work with. And we can do that mathematically, figure out over the contacts or over the glasses. Um, Now, one of the most critical things here is we need to really try this with you. I can do all the math I want, but until I put the lens on and let you try leaning in and coming back and finding the transition zones, we don't really know. Again, look how far this person is from the music stand. That's where I needed the 39-inch work beautifully for Joe. This is not Joe. This is just somebody from the internet with a box over their face. But the height from here to here projected back out onto the lens, I needed 16 millimeters. So I think you get. So I typically will try the lens, set you up, let you do your thing. Um, I found towards the last 15, 20 years of practice, I just always had a music stand. I had music for and I would schedule about a 20-minute to 30-minute time and have the person bring their instrument in. This was after we did the eye exam, and I got the distance numbers for us to then play with exactly this. All right. What about cataracts? A lot of people, I realize those of us that partake in the BSO Academy, um, I won't say our average age is, but it's probably older than the musicians in the actual BSO. Um, and we're beginning to confront the issue of cataract. Now, when I went to optometry school, there was no question everybody was going to get a cataract as long as they lived long enough. Now we know that nutrition has a huge factor to play in the development of cataracts or how much time people are outside, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not an absolute fait accompli that everybody will have cataracts that require surgery. To me, it's always been when I ask a patient, because they'll say, are they ready? Are they ripe? We don't use that term anymore. But by the way, this eye on the left of your screen, a right eye, shows no cataract. This was an attempt of some artist to show a cataract where it's hazy in the center. There are a lot of cataracts that don't look hazy, but are already messing up the quality of vision that a person has through it. So, uh, cataracts are something I thought we should talk about. In particular, what lens should you get as a replacement? So, we know most of us are very familiar with the Snellen chart and clarity and visual acuity. What's the smallest line that you can see clearly? But contrast sensitivity is really an important thing. Contrast, how much difference between the black and the gray do we need for you to be able to see this? Sensitivity, you should be able to go fairly far down something like this. What a cataract is doing is scattering light that causes light to spill over from the white parts onto the black and the black onto the white, and it just causes a real disability in terms of function. So it's not just how bad is the visual acuity, but is it affecting your quality of life? That's when I would make my recommendations to get a consult with a cataract surgeon. So, contrast sensitivity is really something that should be done. Ask your eye doctor if they have it. If they will at least test it, you can always write to me. These are my numbers, and I can give you a sense of what's happening. But still, the decision to go forward with cataract surgery really is about, is it affecting your lifestyle? Okay. Is it getting in the way? Is it stopping you from driving at night? Have you stopped reading in certain situations? Those kinds of things. Are you giving up things you want to be doing and that type of thing? I wanted people to see what these lenses look like. They're pretty tiny. You have a main part of a lens, and then these little parts that stick out are called haptics. These are thicker ones. These are more spring-loaded. When they go into the eye after the bad lens has been removed inside, that's usually done with ultrasound that breaks it up and a suction tool that takes it out. These, by the way, all fold up and they're delivered through a very narrow thing. They open up, these haptics then push to the outside and hold the lens in place in the proper place. Now, these are single vision lenses. They have a single optical power. I can see that on the finger here. It's hard to see here, but these are the new specialty premium lenses. that are being sold to people. Oh, we can fix everything with this. And I hope you see the ridges. It's every one of these ridges that when light comes in, it scatters just a little bit. And what this becomes is a jack of all trades, master of none. And I strongly will recommend that you get the standard um, single vision lenses like this, and you don't pay extra for something that's actually got worse optics. Um, so keep that in mind when you're making your choice. These are some of the other specialty. This one, they're fairly regular. This is a different kind. Oh, we have a near kind, we have a distance part, we have a transition part. All of it creates multiple different focal points throughout the eye. And although you might be able to see there and here, none of it's as good as you would remember. Some people, the idea, I don't need glasses is such a strong thing. But again, as a musician, part of what helped make you a good musician is attention to detail, caring about detail, and all of these specialty lenses get in the way of that. So I hope you found this informative. This is my address, my email address, paul.harrisod@gmail.com. I'm going to post this soon to the paulharrisod.com website so that you'll have a chance to see this. And if you have any questions, please feel free to write to me.